in one single position. If you have say it's your first bell choir, new people, should they stay in one position or should they move? Or maybe you're the new director and the bell choir's been there for 20 years and these are my bells. I've always played these bells. Who has a situation like that? Anybody? A lot. If you haven't yet, you probably will at some point in the future. So when I was faced with that situation, I had a ringer she was just learning how to read music. She says, I can ring D and E5, but I can't ring anything else. And I said, how about we make a deal? I will only move you between D, E, F, G, and A, B. That gives me as a director the flexibility to choose music that would challenge her but not overwhelm her. Because if she's only at D and E, then if there's anything that's outside of her skill level that happens at D and E5, we might not be able to do that piece, or it would frustrate her so much that she would quit. So she agreed to that, and so did everybody else. In that particular choir, my best four-handers were also my best bass ringers. So they did a lot of back and forth. But this middle ground, I had three or four people who I chose music according to their skill and comfort level. There's a very fine line between challenged and overwhelmed. And as directors, it can be difficult to ride that line. If you just make a deal with them, because if you explain why you'd like them to move, I wasn't asking her to go play bass bell or do four-in-hand. Those are all, two bells at a time positions, and she agreed to that, and it worked out really well, and she ultimately became a better ringer and said, I would like to try some four-in-hand now, because she was successful. Okay.
So another part of the stationary permanent is why does your group exist? If your group exists to broaden their ability to read music, you're going to want to move them around from piece to piece to piece to teach them to read the entire staff. If your goal is performance-oriented, so to speak, that you really want to learn as much music as possible, you're going to want to do the stationary assignments where your ringers never move. But if you do stationary assignments, you have to be very careful with what Michèle is saying, because you may have to say, I can't do this particular song because my ENF4 ringer is not capable of executing those techniques or that rhythm in that place. So I need to omit that song. But those ringers become so familiar with their bells that they are able to ring a pianissimo or a fortissimo very easily because they know how to do it with those two notes. With roving assignments, every bell's different on the table. Theoretically, they're not, but they are. And so it's harder for you to just go from one song to the next to ring musically very quickly. So that's a con of moving the people from stationary to roving positions. Are there questions? What's your question? Yes, ma'am.
Suggestions for how to use subs and how to find subs and how to work them in for the piece that you want them to play for.
You want to take it?
Sure.
No.
I'll add if I feel like I
Okay.
need to.
So the first thing that I say is, if you have a hole in the bell choir, leave the hole. Don't ask your ringer side, who's on either side, to play those bells, and don't you play them. Because that means that the muscle memory, forgive me when I repeat, and I'm sure she's going to be in the same position, repeat something that you've said in class earlier today. Bell ringing is muscle memory. If you ring somebody else's part along with your own, you've lost an entire rehearsal of muscle memory. And also, leaving a hole develops independence of each ringer on either side. And if you leave a hole, it helps you to realize, maybe I better not miss today, because that feels pretty awful when there's a hole. And peer pressure can really help with this. All right, so in terms of subs, who gets the subs? The director, or ringers, or combination? The director can get a sub who knows what the music is, who knows what their musical ability is, and can probably better fill that hole. Depending on your job, you may not be able to do that. You may not have that flexibility. if a ringer secures a sub, they're going to go to the first person that they can find on their on their, in their contacts on their phones, that is easiest for them to talk to, but that may not be the sub the director wants. So my preference is to choose between these three people, but you as a ringer have to say to me, I'm going to be out. Who do you want me to get as a sub? Choose one of these three people. And they get the sub and then let me know who's going to be subbing for them. That also makes it harder to be gone because you gotta do work to be gone, because you have to fill that spot in. And where do you get subs? Former ringers, if you have a multiple choir program, that's fabulous because you can start pulling in. You can pull in teenagers into your adult group, or teenagers into your children's group, or adults into your children's group, that multi-generational concept. Other churches, establish a relationship with other churches in the community, maybe get three bell choirs from 3 different churches together. Have them ring for one another, have a pizza party, and then find out, would you like to come sub for us? Our rehearsals are at different times. Can you come sub for me? Maybe there's a community choir somewhere near you. I have found, remarkably, that community choir ringers are so gung-ho ringers that they will drive long distances to sub or to ring. How long have you driven to rehearse?
Well, I flew from Southern California to Northern California to stay with Sonos, and now I'm driving back the other direction to Rim Timberlake, so
Yes.
it's like 6 hours.
Yeah, see, she's not the exception in terms of community choir ringers. They want to ring as much as they can ring. Maybe you have pianists in your congregation, people who have played piano, people who have played another instrument. Give them a little bit of a rookie ringer session and get them in subbing. And develop your own rookie ringer camp, where you invite people who have never rung before to come, give them a little bit of rookie training, and then start filtering them in as subs. And they may find they love it so much you're going to have the problem of, how do I get them into the bell choir? I don't have any space left. Okay.
So I had a situation once at a church that we had like 14 people in the bell choir, and it was great, but they were all busy people. And so I would publish the bell schedule, and they would say, and I tell them to tell me as early as possible, I will be gone for this one, and this one, and this one, or these rehearsals, and or these Sundays. So what we were doing is, say for example, we played once a month. We would rehearse the October and the November things in the same rehearsal.
Yeah.
So if somebody wasn't going to be there for October, but was going to be there for the November time, they were an automatic sub. They could sub for the first Sunday if somebody else was gone. And I could bring an outside person for just the second half of rehearsal if I needed to. So I managed it that way. We had basically our own subs. I also was directing it to churches. So, and I knew their rehearsals were not at the same time because it was, I was doing both. And so they became with each other, which can be dangerous sometimes. One of my choirs had a tradition of, during their mid-rehearsal break, they all had chocolate. So then 2 ringers from my other church came here, and they're like, why don't we have chocolate? They ended up with chocolate, and they still had to do chocolate. So there's different ways to manage it as well. I also said that I wanted to be the one to find the subs because I knew when I was going to be rehearsing which piece when, and when we would need them and what parts they would need to play. So.
Answer your question?
Thank you.
Other
Appreciate it.
questions?
How about the worst rookie conductor mistakes?
Trying to play bells while conducting.
Okay.
Trying to do too much for the ringers, not keeping the beat. Using 2 hands to conduct all the time. It feels so good. It feels so secure to us. It just makes you feel like I got a handle on this. And what's happening is you're giving out 2 pieces of information all the time. And you're telling your ringers, don't look up, because if you don't look up, I'm just going to get bigger. And so the peripheral stuff you're seeing in your peripheral vision, is going to be enough information. I get smaller. I conduct smaller. Other rookie? Specific conducting or rookie director in general?
Well, you can go to director. I was asking about conducting, and that's awesome, but, you know, we all need to hear about the director stuff too.
It takes a lot of willpower to not, even when you're missing a ringer unexpectedly, as the director, to not just play those bells. But as I tell my ringers, and I prove it every time I try it, it makes me less efficient as a ringer, less effective as a ringer, and less effective as a director, because I can't help those who do need the help. And I'm watching my note instead of watching whatever, so I'm not able to give that musical instruction.
Yeah, our hands are tied up.
Right.
So the ringers have no reason to watch you, so what have they practiced that week?
Looking at their music.
Yeah, they practiced, I don't have to look up, cause she's not gonna give me, or he's not gonna give me any information. Yes, I know it's awful to have a hole. It's awful to have a hole in the music, but it's,
Going back to that, I might have a sub while at the beginning when we're first learning the piece, so that it can get a cohesive image of the piece. But as we get closer to performance, I will leave the holes, because that's when they need to learn how to recover.
So then you should typically recommend that people get subs for rehearsals too? Not just like,
Yeah.
Absolutely is.
oh, yeah. I'm sorry, that was what I was meaning, was for
For-
rehearsal. For
Okay.
performance, I'm getting the sub.
okay.
I want control over who's going to be there for the performance.
So then like even getting a sub, like if they're gonna be, if the ringer's gonna be there for the performance, but they have to miss 1 week of rehearsal, get a sub for that,
The way I do it is that I say,
they have to,
you
yeah.
call one of these 3 people or one of these 2 people, because I'm aware they can do what that ringer does.
Yeah.
So, and then they have to make the call, then they have to report back to me. So that's 2 points of contact with
I love
me
it.
that creates a little bit of pressure for them.
I like that. Can you do that in choir? Okay.
Anybody?
If you had 5 minutes to warm up a group before you had to start working on music and you're limited on time, considering a beginner to intermediate group, what would you do with that 5 minutes?
I would do some drills, ringing drills if they're beginning to intermediate. I would do some drills where they're, say, for example, practicing changing bells. So you put 3 bells in front, 3 bells in front of you, you pick up 2 and you have the 3rd on the table. And you practice the technique of ring. As you ring the next bell, the left hand damps on the table, and the left hand picks up the other bell while you ring the next one. Same thing here. So you're constantly practicing changing. So they learn how to get these 2 notes out of their hands and get a new note into their hand. I would do, particularly with beginning groups, I would do rhythm exercises where they're all ringing a bell, and it is a rhythm that's taken directly from the first song that they're going to practice. So they may have you're introducing a piece that maybe has triplets in it, for example. Well, I would hand write out an exercise and copy it and give it to the ringers and have them practice ringing, even though not everybody at the table is going to have to do it. And even though everybody who does do that pattern doesn't have every note in the pattern, they get the sense of the whole gestalt of what that rhythm pattern is and how they fit in as they're ringing that rhythm.
Related to that, there's a really great book of exercises called Coordination Conundrums by Valerie Stevenson with a PH. Stevenson with a PH. And she did much like that. She took rhythmic and coordination issues from pieces that her group was doing and compiled them all into a book. And they're great. They start from the easiest thing, you know, ringing whole notes and everything, to changing them out, to doing different articulations at the same time, you know, shake while you're plucking, all these kind of different things. And they are amazing exercises, I hope. And they're easy to just pull out, okay, let's do line 4 and 5. So, and that way you don't necessarily have to create your own. Because she's got a lot of really good ones in that book.
And who was the author again?
Valerie Stevenson, PH in Stevenson.
And what you can do is, once you get the understanding of her book, then you can create your own exercises if you have the flexibility and time that are based on the pieces that you're going to be doing. anything you can do that directly relates to the music is going to get you one step farther down the road. If you have an adult or a senior adult group that is that level, or bless you, that are working, I would do some physical warm-ups. Gentle, always reminding people, do as you're physically able. If this is uncomfortable, or like I do a balancing thing with people, and I always tell people, don't, if you're not comfortable doing this, don't do it. But some physical warm-ups would be useful. With the children and youth, you can do some rhythm games with them to get their attention focused. Another thing that I try to do when I'm first starting with a group, like at a handbell festival, when I go in and it's all groups from different places, is I don't talk, I just start conducting and get them to ring with my gesture, the tempo that I'm doing, the indication of whether it's a loud dynamic or a soft dynamic, the speed that the Chalarando I'm doing, or the de crescendo, or the rallentando, or whatever it is, so that the attention is focused. I said in the previous class, I will lift up mine eyes unto Beth, from whence cometh the beat. It's a real thing. Other questions?
If like half of the ringers couldn't make the rehearsal, then you cancel the rehearsal, or what?
That's a great
Repeat
question.
the question?
If say you've got numerous people missing for rehearsal, say you have a group of 10 and maybe 4 or 5 of them are gone that day, what do you do instead? Well, you have a couple of options. You can choose to cancel, because it can be very frustrating when you have that many holes, and they get frustrated and you get frustrated, and then nobody's happy. But you could also spend that time doing drills or